Hello, listeners of the Mad Scientist Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Cogswell, here with a special interview with Aurora Sandelands, the host of She's in Control, a radio show that talks about goth culture here on KRSM. Aurora, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Just hanging out, having a glass of wine,
Good stuff after a long Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I couldn't believe it's been so hot here in Minnesota. I was promised when I moved here cold. And
yeah.
We got cold in the winter, but oh god, this summer has been so dang hot.
Try not having air conditioning in your apartment.
Why would you do that? That's horrible. Oh my goodness.
We're all suffering. My poor ferret is like on her back right now with her like little paws in the air because she's so hot.
They got to become puddles. It's the only way. The only way to survive, truly.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell the listeners a bit about your show before we get into kind of overall spookiness?
Sure, yeah. So my show, which is also on KRSM, is every Tuesday at 9 p.m. and now on Sundays at 9 p.m. as well. And it goes over the history of goth primarily, starting back in 500 BC, tracing the roots of goth all the way up to what we know it as now, like inverted crosses, black lipstick, fishnets, and all that good stuff. So I talk about not only music and artists, but also literature, architecture, the entire subculture of goth, which sort of encapsulates a way of life rather than just a genre of music.
Super cool. Yeah, I've really enjoyed your show. That was one of the coolest things about joining the station was finding all these other really cool shows that are going on. And yeah. I mean, it's funny, as all good scientific minds, I was a ska nerd in high school. So it was kind of, just on the edge, just on the fringes of like the punk kids, but really hanging out with all the band geeks. So yeah, that was kind of my thing. So yeah, it's super interesting though. And goth music is so good. But the subculture itself is so immense, and there's so many different subgenres even within the main genre, and so many different types of music, and so many influences that it's very, it is a fascinating topic. I think it's really cool.
Right.
So what got you into it originally?
There were a lot of different things that drew me towards goth. I didn't actually know that I identified with the subculture until I was probably 18, which was, I'm pretty young, so that was only like 3 years ago.
Okay.
But before that, I had always been obsessed with A, the supernatural, B, the dark, and C, the music. So I loved Susie and the Banshees and the Smiths, got me through high school. My parents introduced me to them, and I listened to them daily. And I kind of went through a lot of different phases. Like I tried out punk, I tried out wearing like hippie flowy skirts, I tried out a bunch of different stuff. And then finally, when I sort of branched out and found these people who loved spirits and spooky architecture and books and loved the music that I loved, I was like, holy crap, I found my people.
Super cool. Yeah, it's so weird that it's interesting the different ways people get into the different areas that the paranormal or the supernatural interest brings people, So for me, whenever people ask me, I get a lot of questions, as you can imagine, of, you're supposed to be a scientist, why are you talking about ghosts, right? Or why are you talking about like Bigfoot or whatever? And the answer really is that is kind of where my interest in the sciences came from, was always a fascination with unexplained things.
Right? Oh, check this out already.
Nice! Oh my goodness. Okay. She has a I want to believe tattoo. It is amazing. We're just going to be like showing each other our tattoos right now. Hold on one second. So I just got this one done.
Nice! That's awesome!
Yeah, it's super sweet. I got it done. Stabby Gabby in Minneapolis. Great tattoo artist.
Stabby Gabby.
She's amazing. She's so good. And she just did one that was a cow getting abducted by an alien. And I'm like, I really want that now.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I gotta save money for another tattoo.
That's amazing.
Oh my goodness. So, all right, we're off topic now, everyone. So, all right, so you've said you've always been into the paranormal and things like that. So, give us a breakdown, I guess, on your history in the paranormal. Like, you've mentioned to me already that you feel like you have some abilities like seeing spirits or things like that. So, you want to go into that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So, by blood, I am Romani Gypsy, and Gypsy culture sort of has a lot of spiritual ties within our community, and so, that involves tarot cards, different kind of Wiccan influences, and things like that. And it all kind of started, actually, my granddad passed away when I turned 2. Mm-hmm. And my mom actually told me this story. We were driving by. I was probably 2.5. I could talk by then because I'm super smart. But I was probably 2.5, and we drove by the cemetery that he was buried in. And I had no concept of death at this point in my life. I was 2.5 years old. And I said something to the gist of, Mom, Granddad says hi, as we drove by the cemetery. And she just like went cold. And moving on from there, my grandmother built her house on a Indian burial ground on accident.
Okay.
And she had no idea until the contractors afterwards informed her, but she already had built her house, so she's gonna live there. And the spirits were always, she knew they were there, but for some reason, whenever I came around the house, they were way more active. And I would always, as like a young child, see things and feel things, and I was afraid to sleep alone in her house. Before even knowing what ghosts were, I would not sleep alone in her house. I would sleep in her bedroom up until I was like 13 years old. Like, it's kind of embarrassing. I was like a 13-year-old kid sleeping in my grandma's bed because I was so afraid of her house. But yeah, so I don't know. And from there, I mean, I saw my first specter there. I recently, last summer, actually, my boyfriend, he's a bohemian gypsy. He's seen spirits his whole life as well, but he and I were haunted by a poltergeist last summer. I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but it was one of the scariest things I've ever experienced. So, long story short, I've seen some shit. Stuff.
Well, that's okay. We'll have to edit it for KRSM, but on the podcast, we can curse as much as we fucking want, which is awesome. Yeah,
fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. Oh my goodness, poor Jake. Poor Jake. So you said you saw a specter. Describe it, or can you describe it? Are you comfortable describing it? Like, what do you mean by a specter?
Yeah. So till this day, I'm still not sure what it was, but my grandmother had a couple cats pass away in her house. So it's either that or some manifestation of something else similar. But I was sleeping on an air mattress in her bedroom, and I was facing the wall, and I was like in a dead sleep, and all of a sudden just came awake and was like, what? I need to turn over right now. And I rolled over and saw a maybe 2-foot tall black shadow thing next to my bed, and I could feel that it was looking at me, but I couldn't discern a face or anything really. And I gasped out of fear. I was like, scared, and it turned around and ran away on all fours through her bedroom door. So I don't know if it was potentially the spirit of a cat that had passed away in her house or some sort of weird gremlin. I don't know, but I know I saw it and it was super scary. Really
interesting. It's so weird. We hear actually a lot of So we get a lot of cases that if people tell us about stuff like that, where, so really my area, I guess, of personal interest, like my most is definitely UFOs. That's like my, that's the area that I think is the most interesting personally. But that topic though encompasses so much weirdness now that cases like that where people see, you know, a shadow figure or I mean, the thing that springs to mind that I think of when you say a black, almost an animal shape running on all fours is something similar to, say, a Grim or a Skinwalker even, although it doesn't sound like it got to that level of intensity, you know, but it's so weird that there are these common motifs, right? And that's kind of a point that we try to drive home a lot, is that chicken and the egg question of, is the paranormal or the supernatural simply cultural artifacts that we all have embedded that then our brains create these visions of, or is it something real that our minds then have to make sense of so our cultural perceptions take effect there? Or are our cultural perceptions shaped by reality? You know, so is it that these things do exist out there and we're just seeing them and rationalizing them now because, you know, we're ultimately still ape men trying to make sense of the sun, right? But the thing that I wonder actually if in any of the cases that you've had, so the grandfather one is very interesting. Have you ever tried, I guess, testing your abilities or anything?
Yeah, actually, that sort of has to do with the poltergeist thing from last summer I was telling you about.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I would love to hear about that if you are comfortable.
Yeah, I will touch on it. I won't get into depth about it because of fear reasons. But so essentially, my boyfriend, this was before he and I lived together. It was probably last August or September. He lived in the attic of a home, and weird things just started happening. Like, he saw someone in the corner of his kitchen, and he's used to seeing, you know, his cousin and other spirits sometimes just pop up and like say hello, and so he's not really afraid, and so he just kind of ignored it and was like, oh, whatever, you know. But then there started building a pressure in the building, and weirder things started happening. So, like, for example, once it was during a storm, and we heard like a super loud bang, and a clock that he had on the wall, and there was a table underneath the clock, flew off of the wall and landed in the center of the room, and had stopped ticking at the time 1:40. And so we didn't know what that meant. We were like, should we stay? And try to see what happens at 1:40? And we were like, no. It's like we really felt something weird. And as we were walking away from the house, I could feel something watching me as we walked away from the home. And things continued to happen. We got locked out. There's an old, unused, painted over deadbolt on the front door of the house that the landlords didn't even have keys to. That was initiated from the inside. So we were trying to come home once, and we literally could not get inside of the house because this weird, unused lock had been initiated from the inside, and there was no one home.
Weird.
So other than that, doors constantly slamming. I mean, every day, 5 times a day, doors would slam. Kitchen cupboards would open and have things fly out. There was always little puddles around, and even if you tried to like sweep them up or, you know, whatever, they would come back. What else? Patrick Swayze, the cutout I have behind me, would get knocked over.
No, Patrick!
Not Swayze.
Not good.
And finally, the spirit made contact with Ryan and whispered in his ear, and then pushed a bunch of stuff around in his room all at once. And he left and never spent another night there. He moved in with me that day and never spent another night in that house.
Weird.
And I wouldn't go back. And I saw him actually a couple times, and the way he moved was very sick and dark and jittery, and it felt bad. But we had a medium go, actually. His aunt's friend, who's a medium, went to talk to the spirit, found out his name, which I won't say, and found out that there was also 2 children that had passed away in the house, that the spirits also inhabited the house. And the older poltergeist spirit was manipulating the 2 children against us. And so, testing my abilities, I tried to do a Wiccan protection spell for us, and I tried to cast the spirit away. But I was inexperienced at the time, and because of my heightened power, I guess, or whatever, this is what I've heard from Ryan's grandmother, who's also a gypsy, but it would, I opened a cone of light and let the wrong things in, because I did everything wrong. I didn't cast the spell in a circle. I didn't take off my silver. I didn't ring a bell. I didn't do all the things I was supposed to do to protect myself. And so instead of banishing it, I bound the spirit to me, and then I also bound Ryan to me. So the spirit is bound to us, and he is bound to me on accident. And so... And also, my tarot readings started to get scarier and scarier, and we didn't want the spirit to follow us. So I have cut off all communication. I have not tried to open up any channels. I've not tried to do anything. I won't say his name because I don't want him to find us and for that to happen again.
Man, so that is super scary, number one.
Yeah.
So, dang, that's very scary. I'm definitely a skeptical sort, I would say, right? It's kind of the bent of the show generally, too. But all of the things that I have seen about some of this stuff, one of the things you said actually really struck me as being very interesting, which is the puddles.
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever read the what is the case called? It's not the Enfield Poltergeist, but there's a very, very famous I got to talk to Jerry Pauley of the Hillbilly Horror Stories brought me on for a case talking about a poltergeist that created puddles of water. And he was like, Chris, how could these water puddles form? And the explanation that was given by a skeptic on the ground was that it was, that it was condensate from ice dams building up on the roof or something weird. It was very like, it was very like Mousetrap style, where the guy was like, and then the ice dams melt, and then a bucket gets tipped over, and then there's, the ball rolls down the hill, right, because of gravity. Like, it was very convoluted. And I remember giving that explanation to Jerry and feeling really stupid, because I was like, oh, it's the best this guy can give. And in my head, I'm like, it's ghosts! Get out of the house!
Yeah, we moved the fuck out of there.
That's crazy. So... yeah, that's super interesting. I've been fascinated by, I guess, so I was raised Roman Catholic, but a very kind of magical Roman Catholic thing, I guess. So my mom has done tarot cards since I was a baby. She's very big into astrology, all that stuff. Like I said, my grandma is into all kinds of old world magic and medicine, or she was into those kinds of things. Although I don't think she would have called them magic. I think she would have called them science or like old world science, but it was all magic. She was like chopping up onions and lemon juice. It's just weird, all kinds of weird stuff, whatever. But
totally.
So I'm always fascinated by stories like that, because it makes me wonder almost, is it a personal thing? Because like, so you accidentally found this thing occurring to you and your boyfriend. Whereas, I wonder if I even did, if I did experiments or tested those kinds of things or whatever, it might not ever even happen to me, because I just don't have that opening. I don't have that kind of brain or that kind of feeling, right? So it is extremely interesting. I mean, yeah, I would, man, as scary as that is, that's the kind of thing that I would love to get into. like get into a house with like recorders and things and be like, what's going on in there?
I could never, ever, ever do that. After what happened to me, I considered for a while, trying to open it up and, branch out and communication and all that. But now after actually experiencing something like that, it's not in the cards for me.
Sure.
Not at all.
Interesting.
I love being on the edge. I love being on the cusp. I love the imagery of things. I love hearing about things like that. I love scary movies. But now that I've been through something like that, I just can't handle it.
So I guess that kind of brings, so you said that you are Wiccan, at least to some extent? Like, what would you consider your, okay, is that what you would consider your, like, religious leaning, I guess, or your religious belief?
I'm agnostic, I think. Okay. I believe definitely in a greater power. I believe in the supernatural, but I don't consider myself one thing. I'm definitely not like a season worship kind of kiss trees Wiccan or anything like that. I sort of I believe in something greater than myself, but I don't really know what it is.
Okay. So it's funny, growing up, because of the way that I was raised, I'm very into, say, like demon lore, demonology, those kinds of things. And so whenever someone mentions, I always find it fascinating with poltergeist cases in particular, the disparity between, say, what's the word? Kind of Roman Catholic interpretations versus Buddhist interpretations versus Wiccan interpretations versus whatever.
Yeah, well, and we would experience the three knocks all the time too.
See, and that's the thing that I think is so fascinating is those commonalities, right? I mean, even if you look at some, say, UFO cases, some of the names of the aliens, whatever, that people mention that have taken them or whatever, are at times strikingly similar to the names of demons that you find in things like the Lesser Key of Solomon, or so it's really, I think, very fascinating, that question. And it's kind of people start to edge closer to that area of that idea of belief where it's all connected, right? All of these supernatural events are all one thing, and it from a philosophical point of view, it becomes very, I think, impossible to defend, but whatever. From a real perspective, it's kind of very interesting. So what would you say? So the thing that I find really interesting about your show is you look at the history of Gothic culture from all the way back, right? From the almost the beginnings of time. And one interesting aspect, I think, of Gothic culture is its relation to things like, say, the supernatural or death, or, these kinds of more, occult, I think, is the wrong word, but I think, I don't know, maybe that fits it well, that kind of bringing in of that viewpoint or that ideal in the genre itself. Yeah. Where do you think that started, or where did that start, I guess?
Yeah, so I actually have a kind of a historical answer for this question. So I'm sure a lot of listeners have seen like the breakdown of goth and whatever on the internet, but it kind of started with the Visigoths and the I think Romagoths or something. I can't remember the other name right now, but it was two Roman groups where they stormed not Rome, Greece, and kind of took over and colonized, and with their own kind of Gothic architecture, which brought about a lot of the sorry, I worked all day, so my brain is farting out really
no worries
hard.
At all.
A lot of the imagery that we see in like modern goth, like inverted crosses or gargoyles or what have you. And that sort of made its way into, very ancient literature. For example, like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or Dracula. Those were set in very Gothic type of castles. And, the architecture sort of sparked a mood, if you'll go as far to say that. And that's where a lot of those movies and books sort of got their mood, and which is what I think current goth sort of still exude.
Sure.
And from there, from the books and the movies, it sort of got adopted into concepts in music. So like Dave Vanian, for example, from The Damned, was a grave robber before he was a musician, and so he would decorate the stage as a graveyard and dress as a vampire during his shows, and that influenced Bauhaus, and Bauhaus influenced, a bunch of other people. So it sort of went from deep in history, just imagery here and then, sort of getting changed into a concept and a mood, sort of getting changed into embracing that mood and sort of romanticizing this darker side of life, where at the same time as Beach Boys were releasing their super happy-go-lucky, annoying music, goth was also being produced to kind of counteract that, So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The things that drew me as a kid to, say, like, punk and ska and whatever, are those kind of feelings of, say, I don't know if rage is the right word, I guess, but like, anger, right? I was an angry teenage jerk, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny, the friends that I have that leaned more towards goth were always more, I guess, sort of, again, melancholy, like morose isn't the right word, but it's that same kind of feeling of, I guess the genre fits a larger history of mood, of setting, of kind of place in the, place that you're at or whatever emotionally. But with gothic music, especially, that kind of the droning drum beat and the long crescendo and the, all of those things have always really reminded me of, the chants you hear in cathedrals, right?
Oh,
and just that same kind of, it's very, I think it's one of the few types of music that really does a great job of giving you that sense of setting almost. I mean, I don't know, there's just some things that you can't do with only 3 chords. You just can't do it.
No, and I think you're right too. The tie that you were mentioning between kind of old Christian religion and demonology sort of bleeding into that gothic church type feel is kind of what bred, I think, the occult goth thing that's really come about in the last like 10 years, where everybody's wearing like Baphomet imagery and inverted crosses and whatever. And I think that comes from the old Christian sort of, demon possession type, whatever. And with the whole like grasp and mantling of the dark, kind of went from there.
Sure. Yeah, it really is. It's just such an interesting thing, because a lot of that gets, I think, missed with all of these kind of, genres of music or whatever. Like, I remember being in the music scene, the local music scene in New York City when I was in high school or whatever. And, going to shows, playing on a drum kit that my dad had stolen, in clothes that we got from Goodwill or wherever the hell we got them from, and being told that I wasn't punk enough by kids wearing, Dead Kennedy shirt they bought at the mall, right?
Right.
Goth is one of those that kind of, it's interesting because it takes a lot of, I think, what's the word? Like, it doesn't take a lot to look goth or to be, I guess, that kind of, live that kind of lifestyle or feeling or whatever, compared to some of the other types of things. But I think it's very interesting. Like, do you feel that goth is almost co-opted at times by, say, like, I don't know, like, what, I guess Hot Topic would be the perfect example for a lot of genres or whatever. And my co-host Marie always makes fun of me because she's like, she's like, I liked Hot Topic. It was, you can get cool shirts there or whatever. And I'm like, no, Hot Topic is terrible, Marie. But
yeah.
What do you think?
I think that Hot Topic is great if you're in middle school and are like exploring maybe your goth roots, but I think past that, like Taylor Swift, for example, one of her latest albums was called Goth in a magazine somewhere because she had snakes in one of her videos and was angry sounding and wearing black. Yeah. And to me, that is ludicrous. That's heresy. I am like, okay, well, if that's what goth is, then I'm questioning my entire identity. But no, I think it takes more than just wearing black lipstick and looking sad when you go out in public. It's like I stated before, it's a lifestyle. It's literature. It's fascination with the dark side of life, romanticization of death, and really embracing the beauty in the darkness of life, which sounds really cliche and kind of stupid, but I think that's actually what it is. It's an attitude, and that's why the music resonates so deeply with me, and I think other people like me, is because it captures that feeling. And goth music actually makes me happy, as sad as it is usually, because it's coming from a place of similarity and understanding.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So who, okay, so we asked this of anyone who's like into a certain, so who is your favorite goth, like if you were to point to someone to be like, that's a goth icon, or that's like that's a person that is like the pinnacle of gothicness, versus someone that you think is like, that person's a sellout, the terrible, whatever. Like, give me your two. Who would that be?
Okay. So definitely on the real side of the spectrum is Susie Sue.
Sure. Okay.
From Susie and the Banshees.
Yep.
She made goth what it is today. Not only that, but she's a female, and so I think that makes it extra awesome.
Sure.
But she was actually a groupie for the Ramones, and toured with them, and was on reality TV shows with them, and then was like, you know what? Screw this. I want to be the center of attention. And so she branched off from that and started Susie and the Banshees, and her kind of punk look from when she toured with the Ramones evolved into her kind of signature goth look with the big eye makeup and the puffy hair, and that influenced so much. I mean, so much. And so she really started that. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I would say maybe like, oh God, who calls, maybe like Black Veil Brides or like emo music, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know, because a lot of people look at those like spiky hair, skinny jean wearing high schoolers as like goths, and I'm like, no, you don't get it. You don't get it at all.
Yeah. See, that's the beauty of ska. You can't get overtaken if you never get popular. Best way. That's how we do it.
Yeah.
That's it's funny actually. You mentioned Black Veil Brides. That's my for a time at least, I think. That was my younger sister's favorite band. And I didn't know anything about them at all. I was like, I have no idea. And then I saw the lead singers and I was like, oh, okay, so they're just like pretty dudes. I can see why she likes them. I can see why that's a thing. But
although that is like 80% of the reason I like Bauhaus is because they're pretty dudes, but whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, whatever, right? Like that's the way it happens, but it's interesting, I guess, the things that draw you in, or the things that make you like the type of music or whatever. And I don't know if I'm at the point yet where, again, thankfully, like there's enough new bands that I like that I feel like I'm not becoming like the old dude who hates new music, but definitely edging closer to that as time goes on,
I definitely get that. I'm on that side of things too, because sorry, my ferret is being super loud.
No worries.
Stop. I'm definitely on that side of things too, because I consider myself to be sort of, I don't like to give myself like labels or whatever, but more of a trad goth, which is like traditional goth. because I listen to a lot of music that sounds like it's from like 1979 through 1970 or 1983.
Okay.
So like I like music from that time block because nothing else really sounds like that. And so if I can find modern bands that sound like that, great. But that cold, dark wave from that time period is my bread and butter.
Sure.
And so I'm not an elitist. It's just I don't find very many like modern bands that really like, you know, interest me, I guess, or that I like.
Yeah, that fit much. That style.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of, so I get a lot of, I'd say probably the peak like area of music for me in time was probably, you know, like, I don't know, mid to early 2000s, New Jersey, New York City, pop, like not pop punk necessarily, but like ska punk, kind of like the local shows that were being played or whatever, you know, so like Arrogant Sons of Bitches, the Ergs, Bomb Music Industry, like bands like that branched out from there too, where now, thankfully, Jeff Rosenstock is still making music, so I can always listen to his stuff, but it's super hard to find bands that fit that feel of things that you like. And yeah, especially if you're into a type of music has branched off so much. I think there might be more subgenres of goth than, you know, any other.
Oh God,
it's crazy. You know, it just has gotten so branched that I can see it being really hard to find a band today that fits the sound of the early years.
Yeah.
Does Minnesota have like a big goth scene?
You know, actually, it's really grown over the last couple of years. I've been DJing, so I DJ goth music also live at like dance shows and whatever.
Okay.
And I've actually had 6 gigs in the last 3 weeks, which seems like a lot, but like I guess there's need for goth DJs because the dark scene here is growing. You know, there's the Dark Energy nights at the Kitty Cat Club. There's the Goth S nights, which I DJ. There's the yearly Vampires Ball. There's Goth Prom, and of course there's what's the club? Ground Zero, which everybody goes to, except I don't really like Ground Zero because it's all sort of like like rivet head music, which is not my deal. But
okay, yeah. Cool. Damn. Well, I'm totally gonna have to come to one of those then. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'll invite you on Facebook to my next one. I think it's
hell yeah.
Well, actually, Goth Prom is next week, but it might be sold out. So a month from Monday, I think, is my next gig, but I will definitely invite you on.
Very
Facebook.
cool. Yeah. When we first moved here, like we moved my wife in a year before I got here, and when we moved in, like I went out in like a Bad Brains t-shirt, and someone was like someone pointed at that and was like, "Oh, I have that with the Wu-Tang Clan album on it," and I was like, "It's Bad Brains." It's the Bad Brains. Like, I have that Wu-Tang shirt, though, too, so, like, whatever. But I just remember being like, that's weird that someone knew. Like, that's weird that someone knew it from that one thing. But, yeah, I don't know. I remember reading all this stuff, like, Minnesota has got a big music scene and whatever. And we've been trying to, you know, go to more stuff or whatever. But we're old people. So that's how that happens. So, all right. We only have a couple of minutes left here. Like,
okay.
I want to know, though, give me your top, like, what's your most believed in paranormal thing, your least believed in? I think I have a guess on what your most believed in is from personal experience.
Yeah, definitely spirits and ghosts are my most believed in.
Okay.
Honestly, if you had a 3-hour long podcast, I could seriously talk the entire time about my experiences.
No doubt.
Yeah, and then second most believed in would definitely be aliens. I would say maybe even those two are tied because I hardcore believe in both. Third would probably be sea monsters.
Okay.
Because I feel like the ocean is very vast and unexplored.
And terrifying.
The
ocean's
I'm
straight
super
terrifying.
Afraid of the ocean.
Like,
yeah.
so
it
scary.
is for sure.
Okay.
Then after that, I would say Bigfoot because I'm like, you know, I could definitely see that being a thing. There's, you know, whatever. And then after that, least believed in thing would probably be, oh man. I don't want to sound like a chump, but I kind of believe in a lot of stuff. No, I believe in the chupacabra. My boyfriend just suggested the chupacabra, but I believe in that.
El goat sucker. Yeah, it's funny actually. I didn't know the breadth of paranormal topics that people like. I have a friend who swears that he has seen a real life gnome.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like a real life gnome. And actually, one of the guys, Dave from Spaced Out Radio here, on one of the other channels that we're on, he is famous for his hatred of gnomes because his daughter, I don't want to butcher the story here, and if I am butchering it, he will, I'm sure, send me a message on Facebook, but his daughter had a really bad experience where she was asleep in bed in their apartment, whatever, and some of the gnomes that were outside, like garden gnomes, she swore would come and knock on her window at night.
Oh.
And so one time, supposedly, she heard the knock at night. She freaked out and ran out the door, but when she looked back, the gnome was waving to her. And so, like, that's a scary story.
That's so scary. She's going to be afraid of gnomes until she's, like, 45.
It's so scary. Well, you know what? I mean, I don't know. So the thing that scares me the most, I would say, for me personally, like, the closest to a paranormal experience I've ever had is almost, I guess you would call it like light precognition, maybe, where it's something that seems to run in my family, but also like I have very, very vivid dreams. I always have. I have extremely vivid nightmares in particular. And so at one of the ones that was recurring when I was a kid and still recurs to this day is of a doppelganger of myself tricking my mother and everyone else into thinking that they're me, and then I meet them, and then they have to kill me. Because you can't meet your doppelganger, right? They have to kill you.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Yeah. You know what the lore is behind seeing your doppelganger.
Terrifying.
You're gonna die.
Terrifying. So, and then the dreams, like, they kind of branch out more to, like, they're impersonating my mother or my neighbor or someone I know, and I don't know it until they come to stab me. Pretty scary. But anyways, we had an episode with the Astonishing Legends podcast where they had one of the other members of the Astonishing Research Corps talked about her real life experience with a doppelganger. And from, like, before that episode, my wife was like, it's so dumb that you're afraid of doppelgangers. Like, they're not real. Why is it you're most afraid? Like, you talk to people who think they've been abducted by aliens. That's way scarier than doppelgangers.
No way.
After that episode now, doppelgangers, I'm like, that's scary. It's legitimately scary. I don't care what anyone says.
Well, also because doppelgangers, it's like, you don't know the source. Like, aliens, they come from space. But doppelgangers, is that a rip in the time-space continuum, you know? Is that some Doctor Who shit? You have no idea.
No, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Oh my goodness, doppelganger, so scary. So what would you say is your, again, I think, I don't even know if favorite's the right word now, because you actually had a very, it sounds like, scary experience with hauntings or whatever. But in terms of, like, local lore and everything else, favorite local haunted place? Or local spooky legend? Favorite local spooky thing?
Local spooky legend. Minnesota is kind of a tough one.
Yeah, the biggest one that I was able to find, besides, like, some of the abduction cases that I've heard of now being here, are things like the mounds, right? Supposedly those were, you know, giants lived here 1,000 years ago and yada yada whatever, right? But I don't know. Do you have any that you know of, or not really?
Okay, my favorite local spooky legend. I can do this. Give me a second to think.
No problem.
Probably. Okay, easy answer for the sake of time. So you know of the Soap Factory, obviously. They do a really scary haunted house every year.
Yes.
In Northeast. Okay. So I don't know if you know the story behind the Soap Factory.
No, I don't.
Okay, so the reason why it's so haunted is because before it was a soap factory, it was a meat processing plant.
Okay.
But that was back in, like, the Industrial Revolution. And so they didn't have, like, very good refrigeration and everything. And so the way that they would clean up was to have like wild dogs come in and eat a bunch of meat and just like whatever. But then I think I might be butchering the story, but a guy would come in, and if there was too many dogs, he would just like shoot them and then throw them in the meat pile. So yeah, like kill a bunch of dogs and, you know, whatever. And then before it was a meat processing plant, it was a artificial limb creation factory for veterans of war.
Okay.
So, yeah, so if you want to have some dismembered limbs and like crazy zombie dogs, go to the soap factory, I guess.
Man, that's wild. I'm going to have to check that out for sure.
Yeah, definitely look that up.
We're thinking of ways to do special Halloween episodes, and right near where I work is Cuzzy's Bar, which supposedly is haunted by like a prostitute or something, like a prostitute spirit or whatever from like the old and gold rush times. But like Cuzzy's also has pretty sweet eggs and bacon. So like I'm kind of just into it because I can go get breakfast there and then also podcast maybe if they'll let me do it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's super great. It's like a win for win. You know, it's wonderful. But man, the soap factory. Soap is such a gross thing, actually, in the way that they make it or the way that they traditionally made it. That the fact that it was, I guess it's not really a soap factory anymore, right? It's like a
artist.
Right. But
studios
it was a soap factory at some point.
Yeah, it was a soap factory. That's why it's called that.
Soap factories are gross. Terrible.
Which is really counterintuitive.
Now I'm scared. I was scared before with your other stories, but now I'm really scared. Dog ghosts are scary.
Right?
Good stuff. Man, well that's awesome. So where can people find you?
Find me on Facebook under She's in Control Gothic Radio Hour 98.9. Whoops. And then you can also find me under DJ Mercury to see when my local gigs are coming up if you're interested in going to a goth night or whatever. And then also, I don't know, that's pretty much it. Other than that, leave me alone.
Other than that, no contact, please. All right, very cool.
No, just kidding. I like people.
We'll put the links and all that stuff up on the website for sure. And take a listen. If you already listened to our radio show, She's in Control is on actually right before us. Mm-hmm. So take a listen on Tuesdays. Super good show. Thank you so much for coming on. It was really great talking to you. And we're definitely gonna have to like do some spooky stuff together because it sounds like there's a lot to be done.
I would love that. Or just like kick it and swap spooky stories because that sounds really fun also.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. All right, great. Well, listen, thanks again. And thank you for listening.